You know the image, right? We all do. It's on pretty much every Christmas card ever. You've got three majestic kings all dressed up, following that big star, heading to a quiet, peaceful little stable. It's a serene scene.
But what if I told you that almost everything about that picture, that story we all know, is wrong? The number of them, their titles as kings, even the whole magical star thing. Yeah, the real story is, well, it's way more explosive than any nativity scene would ever lead you to believe.
So first, we've got to do a little deconstruction. We need to break down the myth that's been built up over centuries, the one that's been kind of simplified and sanitized for all of us.
Okay, so let's just put it side by side. The myth versus what the primary source actually says. This idea of three men, that probably just comes from the three gifts they brought: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. But the original account, it never says how many there were. It could have been 2, it could have been a whole entourage of 20. And the title king? Nope, that was added hundreds of years later. The original text calls them something else entirely.
So, if they weren't the three kings from the Christmas Carol, who on earth were they? And this is where the story stops being a fairy tale and starts getting very, very real. And honestly, a lot more interesting.
The actual term used is Magi. Now, this wasn't just some random title. The Magi were a famous, highly respected class of intellectual elites from the rival Persian or Babylonian empires. I mean, think of them as the top scientists, the political advisors, the Stephen Hawkings of their day all rolled into one. These were serious people.
So here's the absolute crucial point. These were not some wandering mystics. These were powerful, influential figures from a rival superpower. Their whole deal was astronomy, politics, religion. They were the experts. So for them to show up in a foreign kingdom, that's not a casual visit. That is a diplomatic incident just waiting to happen.
And that brings us to why they were there in the first place. This was no simple trip to go deliver some baby gifts. No, the entire purpose of their journey was politically explosive right from the get-go.
Just try to imagine this for a second. A delegation of high-ranking officials from a rival nation shows up, unannounced, in your capital city. They completely bypass the palace. They don't ask to see the current ruler. Instead, they just start walking around asking everybody, "Hey, so where is the new king?" In a kingdom ruled by a notoriously paranoid and violent guy like King Herod, that question wasn't just a question. It was pure political dynamite.
And that dynamite was just about to go off. The arrival of these Magi and their incredibly provocative question sent absolute shockwaves through the entire political establishment in Jerusalem.
Let that sink in. A political earthquake. This wasn't some sweet, heartwarming visit. It was a calculated move, a piece of political theater that was a direct threat to the man sitting on the throne.
And you can see exactly why Herod was, as the text says, disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. I mean, think about it. First, these foreign scholars show up and they basically ignore him. Then, by asking for a newborn king, they are publicly announcing that they don't see Herod as the legitimate ruler. This is so much more than an insult. It's a direct challenge to his power, and it's being backed by the intellectual weight of a whole other empire. The royal court must have been an absolute chaos.
And we're not just talking about some local drama here. This event had massive international implications. You have a delegation from the Persian sphere of influence showing up in a Roman client state and recognizing a new claimant to the throne? That is the kind of stuff that starts wars. This was an event that literally made empires tremble.
So why does this all matter? Why is it so important to understand this version of the story? I mean, why trade that simple, peaceful nativity scene for this complicated political drama?
Because the reality is just so much more compelling. It transforms the Magi from these passive fairy tale characters into active, intelligent, and frankly, courageous political players. They weren't just following some magical light in the sky, they were following their data, their scholarship, their science, and they were willing to walk straight into the lion's den to see it through. The story shifts from a quiet children's tale to a gripping narrative about power, knowledge, and having the guts to challenge authority.
And that really leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? When you uncover the political earthquake hiding behind the familiar story of the Magi, it really makes you wonder. It forces you to ask, how many other crucial moments in our history have been smoothed over, dumbed down, and turned into comfortable little myths, hiding a much more fascinating and much more complex reality just waiting underneath the surface?